ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. We want to just say, oh my goodness, it's a thirsty Thursday. We know you need some water out there, wherever you may be watching or listening. If you're driving on your way home, man, thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. Yes. And remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you download your podcast, just go to that little comment box, go to the review channel or the review box or wherever it is or whatever they may call it, wherever you listen or wherever you watch. Give us a 5-star review. We'll really appreciate that. Yes. Ooh, man, the Atlanta Braves lose to the Mets. What can we learn? What can we take away from that particular series? Also, we continue around the NFC South. Our main man, Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons, joins us. And he'll tell us whether or not the Falcons need to make some moves when training camp starts. Whew, whoa, wow, whoa. We wonder what that is. I wonder who that would be. And last but not least, and for the culture, Nick Saban is running his mouth again. We'll get into all that. But, the Braves lose yesterday afternoon to the Mets. Charlie Morton gets touched up, and it just wasn't a good day for the Braves all around.
All the way around. And, you know, when I paid attention to Charlie and the fact that he kept allowing himself to get deep in the count. And and we talked about this yesterday, even the day before. That's been the Mets strategy the entire time, that entire series. Wait out Charlie Morton, wear these pitchers out, get their pitch count so high, and then as soon as they get deep in the count, pounce on them. And they did it in fine fashion. The Mets did. I mean,
patience.
To the tune of a 4-0 lead. And then there were examples that were kind of weird where you would see Charlie Morton maybe throw a curveball again and again and again and again and again. That also was not a good strategy because there was no change in your delivery. And so the selection of pitch is like, why wouldn't the Mets be able to pounce on that? So that was one thing that concerned me and made me think, wow, Alex Anthopoulos might have some work to do because maybe that 5-man rotation isn't as set as we thought it was, especially when you think about the fact that we still don't know what Mike Soroka is or will be, if anything.
No clue.
Whereas Mets, they're looking very happily at Jake DeGrom and the possibility of him coming back soon, and real soon. So then you start looking at those disparities, and at some point you've got to catch up your pitching staff to their pitching staff at a minimum to close the gap and keep this thing competitive for the NL East division winner at the end of the season. Or if it comes to it, to make sure that you have a chance to even get into the wild card conversation.
No doubt about it, because I think that, the Braves they have a chance to win this division. There's just a couple of things that they have to do in order to do that, and we'll talk about that. And what can we take away from this series loss to the New York Mets as the Braves sent 2.5 games back? But before we do all of that, tell the folks about our people that sponsor this particular segment at Blue Nile.
Yes. So Blue Nile, of course, is the original online jeweler. So if you're looking to get engaged, or if you're even just looking for jewelry to gift, you want to visit the website and become a Blue Nile customer. Now at BlueNile.com, hey, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating that very special engagement ring of your dreams or her dreams, and gifting a classic or timeless piece of jewelry at maybe a major milestone. So if there's a retirement in your family, maybe you give that person a nice piece of jewelry to honor that particular event. So there are two parts to the business: wedding jewelry, like we talked about, engagement, or fine jewelry like diamonds, cocktail rings, necklaces, etc. And so, like I've always said, I still just had a birthday a few weeks ago. So if you want to get a pearl gemstone necklace, that would still be a good look. I'm just saying. But ultimately, Blue Nile has simple online tools so you can choose that diamond shape, size, clarity, as well as setting the style. And they then will have handcrafted that perfect engagement ring. So if you're looking to find jewelry but having trouble choosing? Go to Blue Nile. They have jewelry experts on hand 24/7. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners, you can get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. So this podcast exclusive includes engagement. Again, I'll give you the code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured. It ships free, and it's in a package that will be discreet enough so that it won't give away what's inside. You can shop fresh, stress-free, and find your forever peace at BlueNile.com.
Check those people out. Make sure you make your significant other happy, but that's what it's all about. Take this from a man who's been married almost 10 years. God, I feel old. All right, now, T, as far as the takeaways from the Mets series, I think one of the things that we have to do now, and I know we talked about on this show as far as not really taking the Mets seriously. The Mets are going to Met. The Mets are good. They're good, and I think it starts with their pitching staff, and it starts off with my guy. I really like him. He plays for the enemy, but I like him. I really like him a lot, and that's Max Scherzer.
Absolutely.
I think Bassett showed some good things yesterday too as well, and they just made Braves hitter just look like they weren't just capable. So I think right now we have to take the Mets seriously now. The Mets are the real deal, and I think that they aren't going to Met, and the Braves are in a fight to try to get in this win in the division.
Yeah, and the Braves, hey, it's a power hitting team, right? And so they kind of rest primarily on home runs. Right. But if you're going to rest on that, you still have to get players on base. You got to get batters on base. Solo shots are not going to cut it. So that's something I want to see as well. The Braves get back to making that effort to see what that pitch is when it's coming. We talked about this. It's exciting. Don't get me wrong. To see Matt Olson finally get home runs, back-to-back games, he got home runs in, because you also need more than doubles. But guess what? Right. Those doubles are typically advancing the runners and getting you runs. So if the doubles come with RBI versus the home runs being solo shots, I'm all for that. So, yeah, I just want to see them get back to that point where we're seeing runners on base and runners in position to actually score and make it a competition when it counts.
And because it's not like, you're asking them to do something that they aren't capable of, because they have the guys that can get on base, and they have the guys that they don't have to worry about playing hit and run, because those guys can steal bases. They have the necessary tools to be able to play small ball. I mean, I know that's not a popular term to use when it comes to baseball. In today's game, is either home runs or strikeouts, but I think that it's okay to go with that style. And it's okay to play something that you're capable of doing. Now, if they weren't able to do it, that's a whole different conversation, but they are capable of it. And I think that, which brings me to another thing that kind of I'm starting to get a little annoyed by, because, we all know that Ronald Acuna has been struggling as of late, right? He came out on fire coming off an injury, and, and I think that he started the first 32 games. He was at over 300, had a 950 OPS. Now, in the past 23 games, though, he's only hitting 221 with a 614 OPS. Now, I think that people's expectations for Acuna have been very high. Yes. And I thought that, and naturally so, because he wasn't around for the World Series run, and I think that people are making a lot of assumptions that he was just going to go back to normal coming off an injury. And I think that people have to practice a little bit of patience. I talk about Braves being patient at the plate. You have to be patient with Ronald Acuna and not come to the conclusion that he's being a baby or he's hot dogging it out there in the outfield and not giving his best effort. When have we known him to do that? Yeah. Like, when have we known Ronald Acuna to not give effort? Like, that is just so ridiculous when I come across these assumptions and these people's opinions about who he is as a player. And I just think that it annoys me, T, when things don't go how you think they should go, then you go back to the old narrative.
Yeah, and that is, as you mentioned, a very old narrative, because we do know in his first seasons, there was definitely a situation or two where we all scratched our heads and said, so you're just not going to go after that ball? There were definitely situations where he was deer in the headlights and just didn't move, didn't go after ball, and subsequently Snicker pulled him. So that guy ago, yes. This guy, no. His body and his mind and everything that's going to make him the superstar that we know he is, it takes time for that to come back. Some people can hit the ground running and they can be their old selves, and others, maybe it takes a little bit of time. So I think the same. We need to be patient with him, just like we would be patient with any other superstar, unless you're in a situation like Atlanta United that just couldn't be patient anymore, because as they are moving
Yes.
into this season and still down at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, they have to start making moves quickly, have to get results, which they finally did get a result last night, 2-1. And Gonzalo Pineda, got to give him credit for having a lot of moxie to, number one, change the shape of Atlanta United with, and change the starting 11, because he put Ronaldo Cisneros in as striker versus Josef Martinez starting. And hey, that can be controversial, especially because many of us were waiting to see, okay, Joseph, show and prove. You talked a lot in that locker room on Saturday. Let's see what you got. But it turned out that it worked. Ronaldo Cisneros got the brace in the first half. They win by 2-1. We move on now. It'll be interesting to see what they do on Sunday when they play Orlando City FC. But sometimes you got to just do a little something with your lineup, like we've seen Snit do over and over, to get a different result.
No doubt about it. And when you talk about making change, and that's what Martinez and Pineda talked about, making change, it's interesting to see that play out in the following match. And Josef Martinez really not be the main focus of that particular game plan. And it actually worked. So, yeah, this is something we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on. And we hope you keep an eye on us as we move on to our next segment. Our next seg is because we're talking to my main man, Aaron Freeman, part of Locked On Falcons. We'll discuss with him, is Terry Fontenot done making moves in this offseason? We'll discuss all that next right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. This is ATL Day Ones. Welcome back into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. We are continuing our Around the NFC look. Now we stand right back at home with our main man, Aaron Freeman, part of Locked On Falcons. About to give you some good juice about what's going on with the Falcons as we get ready to head to training camp. It's about to get ready to go down. But before we do that, I have to tell you about my friends over at Dave. Dave app is something that, we need in these times. We got to have in these times because you know what? Gas is high and it is so high, but it's going down just a little bit. But, just in case you may need a little help, and level with me here, because maybe you could only afford just a few gallons of gas or tank, or, to save the date and you're wondering how you're going to afford a gift, Dave can help. All right. Now, what you need to do is you need to go download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. You can get it from your Google Play Store. I don't mess with iPhone, so I'm gonna say the Google Play Store and help them, and you can find this app, right? You can sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. That's dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, is a member of FDIC. Your future gas tank and yourself will thank you. Go to dave.com/legal. Now, Aaron, the Atlanta Falcons, there is something to be said about Arthur Smith going into his second year of being a head coach. But I think that what are some of the things that you are seeing as far as the difference between the roster in year one versus year two?
Yeah, I think the goal of this year is that the Falcons have more of the pieces that they need in order to run the systems that they're going to run, right? That was a big thing that Arthur Smith came in here last year saying he was going to adapt his system to fit the personnel that he was inheriting here in Atlanta. And I don't think that necessarily went particularly well for the Falcons to the degree that I think people kind of hoped it would. And so now you see on both sides of the ball, the Falcons bring in more of the types of pieces that sort of at least traditionally have fit in the Arthur Smith offense, as well as the Dean Pease defense. For me personally, I kind of like the direction of the defense a little bit ahead of where the offense is, just because outside of maybe the tight end position, like every position group on the offensive side of the ball, you kind of have questions. You don't know exactly what you're going to be getting there. The defense, you feel a little bit better about some of the pieces that they brought in. They brought in some more proven veterans on that side of the ball with guys like Casey Hayward and Rashawn Evans and Nick Kwiatkowski and Lorenzo Carter and Eddie Goldman. And so you feel like, okay, I know what those guys are going to be. Maybe none of those guys are superstars, but they're all solid role players. And in addition to Grady Jarrett and AJ Terrell and some of the young pieces the Falcons have assembled in defense, you can see the vision more on the defensive side of the ball. You still have those major question marks on the quarterback position, on the offensive line. You have some young, talented wide receivers, and you had Tyler Argier at the running back position, but you just don't quite know exactly what they are in offense. So I still feel like the offense is a work in progress, but I think the defense is well on track to seeing significant improvement this year.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the offense later, especially about that O-line. But just piggybacking off of what Jarvis said, Aaron, in addition to having a different roster to work with this season, Arthur Smith talked a lot towards the end of last season and a little bit at the beginning of this year as well about the fact that he's going to approach training camp and the preseason differently. So what are some of the things that you want to see him do in terms of how he approaches training camp, how he prepares the team in the preseason for that week 1 game against the Saints?
Well, I'm smiling because, last year I complained a lot about how they weren't playing anybody in the preseason.
Right.
And, for people like us that like to talk about the team, we like to talk about things. So it's like very selfish reasons we want to see the team play certain players so that we can have things to talk about. So I'm eager to see Arthur Smith seemingly changing his ways, and he's going to play at least some of the players in the preseason that aren't just like third stringers. I know some of the stars, we probably won't see a lot of Kyle Pitts. We probably won't see that much of AJ Terrell, Grady Jarrett, and probably Cordero Patterson. But some of these other players we kind of do need to see. And so I'm eager to sort of see how he changes things up and what's sort of different. And sort of now that we get to see some of these young players and as well as some of these veterans that or a year ago were just kind of sitting on the bench and you kind of knew that they had their jobs and their roster spots. They weren't really fighting for anything. This year, we should see a lot more competition throughout the preseason process and in the training camp.
Yeah.
That competition. Because this is football, right? Because, all the restrictions that they have as far as during practice, and they can't really go take guys to the ground. So to say that, a rookie tight end in Kyle Pitts doesn't need preseason games where he's getting actually tackled to the ground, I just thought I disagreed with it wholeheartedly, and people tried to look at me a little crazy, and I was like, man, this is football. In order to get better at football, you have to play football, right?
Yeah, reps count.
Not hand-to-hand tag, two-hand tag. It's a different thing. But the one thing that Aaron, that we've talked about ad nauseum, I know we talked about on your show, we talked about on our show, is the lack of pass rush that the Atlanta Falcons had last year. And specifically, I want to focus in on the outside linebacker / edge group. Looking back at the top 4 guys, they combined for 5.5 sacks last year, if I remember correctly. That is a horrible, putrid number. Now, but fast forward and look into what they're bringing into this season this year. You got Lorenzo Carter, and the likes of Ronald Acuna Jr., D'Angelo Malone, and ATL Day Ones coming back. With that being said, we know that more than likely we're going to be a safe assumption that they're going to have a lot more sacks than that. But how much better do you think this defense can be rushing the passer this year in the second year under Dean Pease?
I think it should be significantly better, but obviously, given that they were the worst team in the league last year, they can only go up there. I saw a stat the other day that they were the least amount of pressure from any team in the last 8 seasons or something like that.
Breaking all type of records.
It's one of those things where they obviously have to be better than that. The question is going to be how much better. And I think they'll. I feel like right now I'm kind of projecting them to break 30 sacks this year. So I feel like, a lot of that will be from that edge rusher group where you can have a guy like Lorenzo Carter who could probably give you a half dozen sacks. Hopefully Arnold Ebiketie can come off the bench and give you sort of a half dozen sacks as well. And then you have D'Angelo Malone and Adio Ogundeji also contributing as well off the bench. So I feel like, 30 sacks isn't a whole lot. compared to, the better teams in the NFL. But from 18 sacks a year ago, that's a huge improvement for the Falcons. At least that's a pass rush that is NFL caliber, which was not the case a year ago.
Yeah. And you speak of numbers that really can't go anywhere but up. To me, it's also the run game, because when I look at 1,442 yards, I'm thinking to myself, that's one back for most teams, just real talk. So one of the things that I was wondering about is this: everybody's talking about the battle at QB for QB1, right? And everybody's talking about the fact that, hey, whoever is under center will have a wide receiver room and an incredible tight end room as well, right? So my question and my focus is really on, what of the run game? What's that run game going to look like? And we know where there are holes on that O-line, but what is it that we really need to see out of that O-line? Who needs to step up so this can actually be a complete and fully functional offense, as opposed to the one-dimensional offense we saw last season?
Yeah, you raise a great point, Tenitra, because the quarterback in the passing game always gets all the attention, and understandably, because it's a critical part of success in the league. But when you look at this Arthur Smith offense, it feels so much like an offense that is at its best when they can run the football.
Yes.
And we saw that last year where they really struggled in that regard, and some of that is owed to the poor play of the offensive line. That being able to run the football in early down so that they wouldn't get into these 3rd and long situations, to avoid those problems last year. And so getting the running game going this year will be critical to offset any of the concerns that we may have going for Matt Ryan and Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder this year, and some of the other question marks we have in the passing game. And it's tough to be super optimistic, because the Falcons didn't really change their offensive line. And so the only really change that we had this offseason was we replaced Mike Davis with Tyler Algier.
Yeah.
And you kind of wonder, okay, how much does that move the needle with this running game? So I think it's really important that this offensive line really steps up this year. I think the thing that you're kind of hanging your hat on is that you're getting continuity with the 5 starters, and that you did see some progress over the course of the season last year. You did see Caleb McGarry and Jalen Mayfield, who struggled in pass protection. Both of those guys struggled in pass protection, but by the end of the season, we're giving you good value as run blockers. And if you can pick up where you left off there and continue to build off of that, Jake Matthews, while not the world's greatest run blocker, we've seen him play better than what he did a year ago as a run blocker. We know Chris Lindstrom is an ascending player, and hopefully whatever happens between the competition at Matt Hennessy and Drew Doman at that position, you'll get improvement there as well. So I think there's reasons to be optimistic for the Falcons, but we just kind of need to see it happen on the football field, with this offensive line improving.
Yeah, or if JC Tretter is out there, or anybody else, because you know how Terry Fontenot is. That was one of the things he was known for with the Saints, kind of pulling a veteran off the street and putting a serviceable person in place. So I agree with you. We can hope that Hennessy and Mayfield, just by virtue of competition, make one another better. But I certainly wouldn't be surprised if somehow Terry Fontenot found somebody who is still a jewel who could be serviceable, because, you absolutely have to have that run game going. Really, when you talk about play action and just keeping the other teams honest, you got to get that going. And one more thing, when you have somebody like a Cordero Patterson and you have someone like a Tyler Algier, all they need is the right gaps to open, and they'll take it from there. And all they need is give them a little protection so that they can get where they want to, at least getting past that first level.
Yeah, I've said time and time again, I've said on our show, Aaron, Terry Fontenot need to be in that grocery store, because if they don't like what they see, and once they report and training camps are going, they put those pads on, and it's specifically in the middle of their offensive line at center or guard, make the phone call, Terry. You don't have to call them collect either. Like, you got cell phones. It's 2022. Go ahead and make that phone call and see what those, and start talking some numbers, because that's exactly, you can't play around with what they're trying to do. They say they're trying to win and they're not trying to rebuild. They were scared to use that word. Well, act like it. You got a little change. You got a little strategy, sitting up up under the salary cap. So make it happen, Aaron. Man, I really appreciate you, my brother. We really appreciate you here on ATL Day Ones for joining us. Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Thanks, Aaron. Take care.
All right, you guys don't go anywhere because coming up next, it is For the Culture. Just stick around. You'll find out what we're talking about next, right here on ATL Day One. If you enjoyed the Aaron Freeman interview, if you missed it, go back and check that bad boy out wherever you download your podcast. And remember, wherever you download your podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate you for coming to us first. Because you just got to hear what Jarvis and Tenitra are talking about. And guys, and Tenitra, this is the For the Culture segment, and it's the intersection between sports, entertainment, and the culture, and sometimes whatever the heck we want to talk about, because that's just how we get down right here. Now, Nick Saban, T, he has just opened his mouth again. It seems like he's just becoming more and more of that old guy that's always complaining about stuff. Like when he opens his mouth, and it's kind of sad because, I really like Nick Saban. I really like what he's done, just the dominance he's had as a head football coach. But it just makes me feel weird every time he opens his mouth because it seems like he's always complaining about something. Like, what do you have complaining about, dude? You got a million national titles, and you have all the money you want. So it just seems like he just speaking too much. Like, I'm gonna read you a quote, and I want to get your thoughts. All right. This is Nick Saban speaking. We don't have any guardrails on what we're doing right now, Saban said. We don't have no restrictions on who can do what. Some people are going to be capable of doing certain things. Other people aren't going to be capable. But the bottom line is we'll lose competitive balance, which everything we've always done in college football is to maintain competitive balance. Same scholarship. Everyone had to play by the same rules, whether it was recruiting or whatever. Right now, that's not how it is. Does Nick Saban have a point, T, or is he just running off at the yard?
He has a point in the beginning of that quote, but everything else is a ruse. Everything else he said is ruse. Like, I literally was like, maybe I should take notes. No, and no. So, yes, I agree with him on one thing and one thing only, and that is, yes, there are no guardrails. He's absolutely right. There are no guardrails. Everyone is just kind of doing their own thing. But the other piece to that is this. Do not, when you are closing in on double-digit national titles, talk about competitive balance.
Right.
Man, please. Competitive balance? I mean, what do you mean? Right. Whether you're looking at Alabama individually or the SEC collectively. I mean, that really should make you laugh, Jarvis. Keep laughing because that's
the haves and the have-nots, right. Essentially.
Like, the definition of the haves and the have-nots, his picture and a crimson little elephant for Crimson Tide, it's all right there. So that's the piece that really, really bothered me probably the most, because it just seems like you're kind of a rich who wants to get richer, and you're kind of standing behind something like this and complaining when in actuality, there's nothing that's going on, whether it's a USC and a UCLA bolting from the Pac-12. There's nothing going on in college football that is going to hamper Alabama's ability to return to the college football playoff. The end.
Not at all.
I see nothing. So yeah, I really need him to miss me with every single comment. But the competitive balance is probably the one that has most of us up in arms.
No doubt. We'll talk about all of that movement. You mentioned USC and UCLA about the movement and mega conferences and whether or not they're going to be able to stick around. We'll talk about that. But T, tell the folks about Coffee AM. You see how amped up I am? I got it in me today. T, tell them about Coffee AM.
Well, I'm hoping that I can get a little something when I go home, because, when you wake up at 5 a.m. and you have to be on, and you crack the mic at 6:20, you really have to have some energy. And so that's when something like a Coffee AM or the teas that are with Coffee AM, thank you guys for my tea, that's when that comes into play. So for me, I'm about to grab a cup, if you will, because I need to get some energy to take me through the rest of this day. And that's where we can support our small batch local coffee roaster, the best in the country. Now, it's the freshest coffee. We tell you guys over and over again. Why is that important? Because you want to know that if the coffee is shipped, that it's roasted that same day or not long after. Everybody wants a fresh product, and Coffee AM only roasts current crop specialty grade coffee. But the good thing about it is they still have a really big selection. They get coffee from all over the world, organic, fair trade, direct trade, you name it, they get it. And not just coffees, by the way, but gourmet teas like the ones that they sent me. I love green tea and more. And again, it's always a privilege and an honor. We all should feel like this, to be able to support a locally owned business. So go to coffee.com/locked on today. Take a look at their full menu of coffees, teas, and even some gift sets. That's coffeeam.com/locked on. And you can use that coupon code locked on to get 15% off on your first order of coffees, teas, and gift sets. Again, it's Coffee AM. They are the best small roaster in the country, and it's coffeeam.com/locked on.
Go and check those people out. I don't have my coffee cup down here because I put it in the dishwasher. So, yeah, I'm still drinking it, and we own it, and we hope you are. Check it out, too, because we 100% stand behind stuff we talk about right here on ATL Day Ones. Now, T, we talked about the USC and UCLA, but I think a lot of people, making that move to the Big Ten, but I think it was in response to what Oklahoma and Texas did. A lot of people were up in arms about them making the jump into the SEC. Now we have Nick Saban running off at his lumberyard, or his pencil sharpener, for those who don't get the analogy. But I think that there's something to be said about where the college football landscape is, and whether or not mega conferences are going to be the thing going forward. And I for one think they are. I don't think they're going anywhere, because I think at some point, though, they're going to have to, those mega conferences are going to become entities, separate entities, and that don't include the NCAA, because I think that NCAA is a fossil of an organization, and it is outdated, and they don't care to make any changes. So I think that if anyone needs to be scared, it is the NCAA, not necessarily these big schools making a jump to different conferences.
Right. And I feel like maybe low key when Nick Saban was talking about the fact that, the competitive, that competitive nature, if you will, or the competition won't be there, or, the field won't be a level playing field anymore. I thought about this and I said, you know what? I feel like he's teeing this up for these mega conferences to then break away into their own, you said it, into their own entities, and then put the regulations in place that they want to put in place effectively. Yeah. And so I agree. Mega conferences, they're here to stay. Listen, Nick Saban, SEC, you guys and other conferences have been threatening all along. We're going to take our ball and run, Power Five. So it only makes sense that the mega conferences are kind of, to me, the next step or the next level from that conversation about the Power Five breaking away and doing their own thing. And then the next step from those mega conferences is to really, it's almost like what keeps coming to my mind is LLC, having their own entity and being able to therefore govern accordingly. But I tell you what, we'll be watching this to see what Nick Saban's comments are next week. But it's going to be an interesting SEC Media Days for Nick Saban, because I have a feeling he's going to be fielding questions about this commentary. I still think Jimbo Fisher in that situation is going to come back up. And I feel for him because he's going to have to answer to some people about those comments from Channing Crowder. I'm going to leave that right there. Tomorrow, we hope to talk about the Braves getting their first win in the 4-game series versus the Nats ahead of the All-Star break, and Hawks get back to Summer League action. So hopefully they'll get another dub in Vegas. And hey, we're here to talk about any and all things sports in Atlanta. So after you check us out, don't forget to check out A to Z with Mark Zenos. Thanks again for stopping by, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Y'all come back now, you hear? We got a special treat for you on a Friday.